So we'll continue with the question answers on that chapter, The Science of Living. So this next uh, next section is about this part from the text. It is only by observing these movements of our being with great care, by bringing them, as it were, before the tribunal of our highest ideal, with a sincere will to submit to its judgment, that we can hope to educate in us a discernment which does not err. Sagarika, can you read the, oh, this is a long, read the first para to start with?
Yes, thank you, Radha. Mhm. The science of living on education. One must be clearly aware of the origin of one's movements because there are contradictory velities, velities in the being, some pushing you here, others pushing you there, and that obviously creates chaos in life. If you observe yourself, you will see that as soon as you do something which disturbs you a little, the mind immediately gives you a favorable reason to justify yourself. This mind is capable of gliding,
Gilding.
gliding every, gliding, है ना? नहीं,
Gilding.
gilding everything. In these conditions, it is difficult to know oneself. One must be absolutely sincere to be able to do it and to see clearly into all the little falsehoods of the mental being.
So it is clear. Anything to discuss or ask?
Mm.
The mind's tendency to just for self-justification.
Mhm.
Okay. Sagarika, you want to continue?
Yes, I can. If, if in your mind you go over the various movements and reactions of the day like one repeating indefinitely the same thing, you will not progress. If the reviewing is to make you progress, you must find something within you in whose light you yourself can be your own judge. Something which represents for you the best part of yourself, which has some light, some goodwill, and which precisely is in love with progress.
So
Place that,
just a minute. So this is the
okay.
highest tribunal that earlier
Mhm.
discussed when we read. So something which is the best part in you. Right now, she's not saying psychic or anything. She's not using that term. But whatever is accessible, whatever is the best part, uh, and she gives goodwill and in love with progress. These characteristics. Carry on, Sagarika.
Place that before you and, first of all, pass across it as a cinema all that you have done, all that you have felt, your impulses, your thoughts, etc. Then try to coordinate them. That is, find out why this has followed that, and look at the luminous screen that is before you. Certain things pass across it well without throwing a shadow, others, on the contrary, throw a little shadow. Others yet cast a shadow altogether black and disagreeable. You must do this very sincerely, as though you were playing a game. Under such circumstances, I did such and such a thing, feeling like this and thinking in this way. I have before I have before me my idea of knowledge and self-mastery. Well, Was this act in keeping with my ideal or not? If it was, it would not leave any shadow on the screen, which would remain transparent, and one would not have to worry about it. If it is not in conformity, it casts a shadow. Why has it left this shadow? What was there in this act that was contrary to the will to self knowledge and self mastery? Most often, you will find that it corresponds to unconsciousness. Then you file it among unconscious things and resolve that next time. You will try to be conscious before doing anything. But in other cases, you will see that it was a nasty little egoism quite back, which had come to distort your action or your thought. Then you place this egoism before your light and at, and ask yourself, why has it the light to make me act like that, think like that? And instead of accepting any odd explanation, you must search and you will find in a correct of your being something which thinks and says, oh, no, I shall accept I shall accept everything but that. You will see that it is a petty vanity, a movement of self love and egoistic feeling hidden somewhere, 100 things. Then you take a good look at these things in the light of your ideal. Is, cherish, is cherishing this movement in conformity with my seeking and the realization of my ideal or not? I put this little dark corner in front of the light until the light enters into it and it disappears. Then the comedy is over. But the comedy of your whole day is not finished yet. You know, for there are many things which have to pass thus before the light. But if you continue this game, or truly, if it is a game, if you do this sincerely, I assure you that in 6 months you will not recognize yourself. You will say to yourself, what? I was like that? It is impossible.
Thank you, Sagar.
Mm.
Yeah, very detailed instructions about how to do this activity, which in Living Within book they have titled in self observation and self organization. So the extract is from here.
But I think it sounds simpler than it actually is, right?
Sorry?
It sounds simpler than it actually is. I don't think it's very easy to do.
No, it is not at all easy.
Yeah, so it sounds very simple, like, oh, it's okay, you bring this in front of you, think about it some more, and say, okay, light will enter it, and ta-da! I don't think it's so simple.
No. So there are two things. There was a time when I used to do it very regularly, and it has amazing effects. There is no doubt about it.
You used to do what?
I used to do this regularly. There was a time when I mean, now I do once in a while, but there was a time when I used to do it regularly. And I'm saying that it is pretty amazing. The effects are pretty
You
amazing.
mean you would do the review of your day?
Yeah, yeah. Hmm. At night before sleeping. And now also at times I do. And uh, based on this, I sometimes, these Lavani teachers, I also guide them to do it with their what happened in the school with that, the same principle, but applying it to noticing the children. I
Yeah.
have applied it even to when I was looking after maintenance in the center with Durji and Praful, two boys, other two. We would do this. I would guide them, and we could, at least I could identify which was the dark spot in the center, And when we went there, we found, yes, it needed attention. So the same principle of basically in your consciousness connecting with something which is uh, the highest, or putting an ideal. And this is not a mental review. This is, like she says in the cinema, images pass. And it is not, need not be chronological. You focus on the day, and then images will come to you which matter to you, which need to say something to you. So it is not a mental review at 9 a.m. I did this, 9:10 I did this, 9:30. Not like that. You just concentrate your consciousness with this aspiration that let me look at my day. And you remind yourself of the ideal first, and then let the images pass. And for people who are visual, it can be light and shadow. I am not visual. So for me, it is more kinesthetic. So there is a certain unease in the being when something passes. And with others, it is not, you know. So when you start doing it, it is simple. There is no effort. It is just that initial effort of concentrating your consciousness and making that aspiration. And the results are very amazing. Uh, but yes, at another level, she's written very systematically. To get into it initially might can be difficult.
But wouldn't it be easier to do it with someone else? Like, say, for example, you get the teachers to do it with children, you know? So you observe someone else and then turn the focus back on yourself. I don't know which would be easier. Is it easier to start with yourself, or is it easier to start with someone else?
You cannot start with someone else unless you have done it for yourself. You have to experience it, no? Because otherwise it's a mental activity which has no use.
No, like what you do with the Lavani teachers,
Ah.
when you tell them to sit and look at their day with the children.
No, I guide them. I guide them.
Oh, okay.
I guide
So maybe you can do that with us also, and do a little guided something for us.
them. Yeah.
Why? I mean, since you've done it, we're only like 4 or 5 of us.
Yeah, I can
Have
try.
maybe think.
Not right now. Let's continue reading maybe at the end. Or,
Okay.
uh, so there, yeah, there are also things like when I'm saying that there was a phase when I was doing it regularly, that if I would put something, a problem to the mother, like something I was struggling with, which maybe could be a nasty interaction I had, could be, whatever. And then I would write it in my diary. And if after a few days I would read my diary again, there was no memory that I was actually struggling with this. I mean, that thing had been resolved to this extent that I would say, huh, I wrote this a few days back. What? I don't remember. It was like that. So that's why I'm saying the effects are amazing.
No, you mean it gets resolved by itself without your knowing.
Yeah. At least that's what I have experienced. Any questions on this passage? Something not clear? Okay, then we carry on. Prerna, would you like to read from here?
You may be 5 year old or 20, 50 or 60. Yet transform yourself in this way by putting everything before the inner light. You will see that the elements which do not conform with your ideal are not generally elements which you have to throw wholly out of yourself. There are very few of this kind. They are simply things not in their place. If you organize everything, your feelings, your thoughts, your impulses, etc., around the psychic center, which is the inner light, you will see that all the inner disorder will change into luminous order. Continue? Should I continue? Yeah. It is quite evident that if a similar procedure were adopted by a nation or by the earth, most of the things which make men unhappy would disappear. For a major part of the world's misery comes from the fact that things are not in their place. If life were organized in such a way that nothing was wasted and each thing was in its place, most of this misery would not exist any longer. An old sage has said, there is no evil, there is only a lack of balance. There is nothing bad, only things are not in their place. If everything were in its place, in nation, in the material world, in the actions and thoughts and feelings of individuals, the greater part of human suffering would disappear. There are two things to be considered: consciousness and the instruments through which consciousness manifests.
Stop here. Stop.
I left something.
No, no, I'm saying
Oh,
stop here. We discussed.
okay, okay.
Right. With this idea that the is it clear? Was
Yeah,
it
I
done?
completely agree. I
Yeah.
think things are completely out of place. In fact, I think all our problems are because of, the fact that nobody pays attention to detail and people don't have sufficient consciousness to understand how important it is to have everything in its place, not just at a psychic level, but even at a physical level. It's really, really important. And just missing that causes a huge amount of grief. And if you can just get even the physical parts in place, just put things where they're meant to be,
Mm,
I think it'll, remove one layer of suffering,
mm,
which is just so unnecessary. I've thought about this so many times, and I felt really sad about the fact that people don't understand this, that it's so easy to do at least the most basic physical stuff. Mind and organizing mind, consciousness, are not more difficult, it's more esoteric. At least if you do the physical stuff, then from there you can progress to other things. But the idea of having order in your life is not very common.
mm. Yeah. So the mother has spoken about it somewhere, and she has said that uh, the state in which a person's cupboard is tells a lot about the state in which their mind is. So that connection. But there is also this sentence that there is no evil. When something is not in its place, that very thing becomes evil or bad. But essentially, actually, there is no evil. Evil is only when something is out of its
I
place.
don't understand this much.
So let's take an example. What shall we take? Well, in poetry too, there are so
Hitler.
many examples. Like
Just
the same iron which is used to kill somebody uh, is the same iron can be used for uh, constructive purposes. Yeah, when that is put to a use which is not meant, it is not meant for, then it becomes evil.
what
Uh,
to do about people who have, outrageous evil thoughts like Hitler or rapists or child abusers? What do you do? How do you make sense of that? Where's the balance? Where are they supposed to be? That
One would have to, so raping or murder or all that is an outcome of something, an inner movement, an inner attitude or movement or disbalance in the being where uh, where let's say the need for attention, okay, the need for which leads people to be very aggressive also, which creates insecurity, then leads to aggressiveness in some, etc., etc. So, where is it emanating from? What is that? It is essentially there is a need for wholeness, for completeness. All creation seeks completeness, oneness. And when that need is not met, in different people, it expresses itself differently. So one would have to go to the root of it. You can't apply it at the superficial level and say this thing. So when she's talking about this, she's talking about at the very essential core level. And at the very essential core level, the world is made of very few elements. It is only their arrangement or interaction with each other that creates the complexity we see. But these basic, like we were talking about last time, I think you was asking, is love you were talking about something else. I'm saying love, but we were talking of some other thing. Is it a principle or is it a force? There was some discussion last time about in the passage that whether it's a force or it is a principle or it is a whatever. So, so there are very few principles in that way. They're essential, which in the first chapter of Life Divine, if you were to read, Sri Aurobindo sums up very beautifully uh, these 4 or 5 things which all humanity is seeking for, all creation is seeking for. In fact, we should read that one para, which will complete this after we finish this section.
So when I look at it like this, that the lack of balance in a person internally is a disbalance in his sense of self, like their own sense of self. However they've been raised and how whatever the circumstances around them, like you're saying that there could be need for attention and loads of so there is a disbalance in their being, um, which creates whatever sense of self. Could be egoistic, could be attention seeking, or could be, whatever evil thoughts of harming others or sexual abuse or um, killing and hitting and whatever. And that kind of disbalance, I link it to the disbalance of their sense of self, which comes from so many uh, circumstances around them, right from wherever they have been brought up, how
This,
they've been raised.
this disbalance exists in all of us.
Yeah, exactly. This disbalance,
There is any individual who's without this imbalance. And that's what, so we all suffer either physically or emotionally or psychologically at one point or the other. So basically, what she's saying is for the real cause of all suffering is disbalance. And in Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo says all problems of existence are essentially problems of harmony. So when there is not a harmony, then problems occur. So what needs to be harmonized in different contexts? It can be different things. Okay, let's carry on. Pooja, would you like to take from here?
yeah, sure. There are two things, right? There are two things to be considered: consciousness and the instruments through which consciousness manifests. Let us take the instruments. There is the mental being, which produces thoughts, the emotional being, which produces feeling, the vital being, which produces the power of action, and the physical being that acts. The man of genius may use anything. You want me to stop?
No, continue.
The man of genius may use anything at all and make something beautiful because he has genius. But give this genius a perfect instrument and he will make something wonderful. Take a great musician. Well, even with a wretched piano and missing notes, he will produce something beautiful. But give him a good piano, well tuned, and he will do something still more beautiful. The consciousness is the same in either case, but for expression, it needs a good instrument, a body with mental, vital, psychic, and physical capacities. If, if physically you are badly built, badly set up, it will be difficult for you even with a good training to do gymnastics, as well as one with a beautiful, well built body. It is the same with the mind. One who has a well organized mind, complex, complete, refined, will express himself much better than one who has a rather mediocre or badly organized mind. First of all, you must educate your consciousness. Become conscious of yourself. Organize your consciousness according to your ideal. But at the same time, do not neglect the instrument which are in your body.
Okay, you can stop here, Pooja.
All right.
So this idea is also very clear. He's making a distinction between consciousness and instruments. And training of the consciousness, she's saying, is become conscious of yourself, which we read about last time. What does it mean to be conscious of oneself? Conscious of all the origin of each and every movement in oneself. Organize your consciousness according to your ideal. And at the same time, do not make. So then becomes the second part, the training of the instruments, which is what the further chapters are about, the training of the instruments, mental education, physical education. So idea itself is very simple, clear. Yeah. Ila, are you in a position to read or not?
Um, well, firstly, my voice is a bit messy, and secondly, there's a marriage going on at the back. There's a big dhol thing happening here. I don't know if you can hear. I can
Okay.
try if you want.
Yeah, we can't hear the whole.
Okay. Where shall I start from? Take an example. Okay, take an example. You're in your body with your deepest ideal, but you find yourself before a school class and you have to teach something to students. Well, this this light is up there, this light of consciousness. But when you have to explain to your class the science you have to teach, um, is it more convenient to have a fund of knowledge, or will the inspiration be such that you will not need this fund of knowledge? What is your personal experience? You find, don't you, that there are days when everything goes well, you're eloquent, your students listen to you and understand you easily, but there are other days when what you have to teach does not come. They do not listen to you. That is, you are bored and are boring. This means that in the former case, your consciousness is awake and is concentrated upon what you're doing, while in the second, it is more or less asleep. You are left to your most external means. But in this case, if you have a fund of knowledge, you can tell your students something. If you have a mind trained, prepared, a good instrument responding well when you want to make use of it, and you have also gathered all necessary notes and notions, all will go very well. But if you have nothing in your head, and besides you are not in contact with your higher consciousness, then you have no other recourse than to take a book and read out your lesson. You will be obliged to make use of someone else's mind.
Okay. So this, I suppose, all of us who have taught have experienced, no? Sagarika, is this clear to you? Prerna, all clear?
It's a different energy when you are at that space. Matlab, teaching movement, you can feel it. Yeah. When there is a pin drop silence in the class, and still everybody is engaged. There are moments. Yeah.
And don't you feel that it's somehow easier to feel that light when you are with little children? As the mind develops, the ego develops, your students become older and your consciousness also becomes more and more externalized, and there is a greater difficulty in retaining that light and accessing and expressing it. At least that's my experience.
Very
Okay,
true.
we have
But
just
I have a
much.
question. I have a question here. I have a question. In she talks about how when your consciousness is awake, you know, you are fluent, you're eloquent, you're absorbing, blah, blah. But does it also mean that you're necessarily connecting well with your audience? Because, for example, I mean, and I'm asking because I've found this happens to me sometimes. So I think I'm explaining really well. Okay. I'm really in the flow and I'm explaining. And then suddenly I look and I see everyone's completely blank. But I am in it, I am like channeling major stuff and I'm explaining really well. But if they're not in my space, then I've lost them somewhere long ago. So I don't know. It's happened to me not often, but sometimes. And so I don't know whether just being in that space and channeling, everything, whether everything is working, whether that actually always works with an audience, because sometimes the audience can be quite, I'm not talking about school children because I'm not taught, but when you have a multifaceted audience.
So, I think there are two things here. One is, first of all, she's talking about light of consciousness, which which is not the mind again, which is like you are, the mind is the outer instrument, which is what she comes to next. That when you are not able to be in that state, which is connected with something higher, not mental knowledge, something higher, then you have to fall back on the mind. If your mind is trained and you have knowledge of that subject, at least you will be able to access that and explain things. If you can't even do that, then it comes to taking a book. Now, what happens is when you fall back on your mind, the other consciousnesses also in you have to be trained, the vital, especially, I would say. For example, I'll give you another example similar to yours, but at a different level. Whenever I needed to do a workshop at the center, I would go into that silence room and meditate, invoke. But what would happen? It would just quieten my energy so much that I would become very dull and boring. It was really difficult for me to speak or connect with people before me. So all the vital energy will go to sleep, and the workshop would be totally boring. Then I realized that my strength is mental organization. So I must put my consciousness in the mind, and yet before the workshop I would invoke, offer, only till a certain point, without going into deep meditation myself. Just do an offering and at the mental level have everything organized. And then when connecting with the people, keep my vital energy up and aware of where each one was. So the days I'm able to do this at all these three levels, and of course the body has to be sound and healthy and not tired from lack of sleep or anything like that, then it goes well. But if I have just the mind and even the invocation, but the vital is not, uh, in its own world, then it doesn't work. So all these bridges here, she hasn't spoken about that, but from my experience, that's how I see it. So you might be in a very good mental space, everything, the ideas are flowing, everything is happening, but maybe your vital is not connected with where the people are. And that connection is also very important.
Yeah,
That is the
perfect.
problem I face in my BLS sessions. I don't want to connect my vital with where they are.
Bad Anuradha.
So, right. Okay, shall we go on? Shall we come back to Sagarika? Just read one para, okay?
Okay. Take games. There too you find days when everything goes well. You have done nothing special previously. But even so, you succeed in everything. But if you have practiced well beforehand, the result is still more magnificent. If, if, for example, you find yourself facing someone who has trained himself slowly, seriously, with patience and endurance, and who all of a sudden has a strong aspiration, well, this one will beat you in spite of your aspiration unless your aspiration is very much superior to that of your adversary. If you have opposite you someone who knows only the technique of the game but has no conscious aspiration, while you are in a fully conscious state, evidently it is you who will defeat him because the quality of consciousness is superior to the quality of technique. But one cannot replace the other. The one which is superior is more important, granted, but you must also have nerves which respond quickly, spontaneous movements. You must know all the secrets of the game to be able to play perfectly. You must have both the things. What is higher is the consciousness which enables you to make the right movement at the right moment, but it is not exclusive. When you seek perfection, you must not neglect the one under the pretext that you have the other. Please explain something. It's yes.
This Ila will explain, as it is her field.
Well, actually, I was going to say now I've found a way of winning my Scrabble tournaments. So, basically, there are two things at work. I mean, from my understanding of this, there are two things at work. One is the knowledge. Like you have to know, you take any game, right? You have to know how to play badminton. You've got to know this is a shuttlecock, this is a badminton racket. I have to hit it. I can do backhand. I can do forehand. So that's technique, right? And that's the way of playing. So that's one part. You can be very, very good at that. But if you want to beat your opponent, you have to be in a state where your consciousness is so completely in tune with what you're doing that you can intuit, you can guess what your opponent is going to do before you do it. Like, say, for example, how do you play badminton? You hit the shuttle, it goes to the person hits it back. Before the person hits it back, because you're so completely conscious, you know where it is going to land. So you can be there and you can hit it. If you can pick up the shuttle so well because you're so fully conscious and so absorbed in the game, you maybe both matched equally in terms of technique and strength and everything. But because your consciousness is so much more elevated, you will be at a superior level and you should win your game. Is that right?
Yeah, that is one example. So
Yeah.
even if you don't, if even if it is not about beating the opponent, even then, and one is like she's saying that the intuition comes into play where you are able to, you're so much at one with what you are doing. There is no kind, you are kind of completely identified with it that you are able to intuit. But also, even your own shots. Uh, this is something partially I've tried, and then I've heard Amita speaking about it. I think recently, maybe in that talk also, she shared the spirit at work. Uh, so when you play and you aspire, you kind of offer it and you aspire and you say, may this shot be right, and you notice it goes exactly in the place, where it needed to go. If it at each time you, I've tried this offering, they say in table tennis or something, and it worked. And in tennis also, once or twice I tried it. And Amita was sharing that same with her coach, that she was never able to beat him, but when she started doing this, he was also flabbergasted. So technique wise, he was superior, but it was her aspiration plus technique which gave the result. That's what the mother is emphasizing in this whole thing, that both are important. Yes, there is a hierarchy. Consciousness is superior to technique, but you cannot say, I will only have the higher consciousness and everything will be done. No need to train my mind. There are people in spirituality, even in Sri Aurobindo circles, there are people, mother will do everything. So I don't need to train my mind. I don't need to work on my nature. I don't need to work on health. Mother will protect me. Mother will look after me, blah, blah, blah. You know, so there is that kind of thing. And that is what brought India down. Because when there were these 16 attacks on Ghazni attacked that temple, Somnath temple, 16 times. Why? Because, oh, God is there, God will protect us. So 16 times that fellow came and ransacked because everybody is waiting for God to protect. So that is what she is hitting at. That kind of attitude is no, no. So just the technique without the consciousness will give you good results, but nothing exceptional. Just the consciousness might once in a while do, but technique is important. And when the two are combined, then it is magic.
I also have another thing to add to this, which I think she is mentioning, which also what we all talk about and what you're saying, the work, our own work, which is practice. So, in this, the notes that I made, I put it as consciousness plus knowledge plus practice, because ultimately, uh, what you keep practicing becomes your the way you do it. And of course you'll aspire for it, you put your consciousness there, you have that knowledge or the technique with you, but also the practice part.
Yes. Yeah, otherwise the manifestation is not happening. No? You practice it, put it into some material form. Prerna, you want to take up the last para?
Sure. Should one play in order to win? When you have 3 or 4 year old consciousness, there is an altogether necessary stimulant. But you may have a 4 year old consciousness even at the age of 50. May you not? No, even when you have a ripe consciousness, you must not play in order to win. You must play for the sake of playing and to learn how to play and to progress in the games in order that your play may become the expression of your inner consciousness at its highest. Is this which is important? For example, people who like to play well do not go and choose bad players to play with simply for the pleasure of winning. They choose those who are the best players and play with them. I remember having learned to play tennis when I was 8. It was a passion, but I never wished to play with little comrades because I learned nothing. Usually, I used to defeat them. I always went to the best players. At times, they looked surprised, but in the end, they played with me. I never won, but I learned much.
He's saying for very young children, competition, this need to win is a stimulant. First you run and you say, "मैं first I, मैं first I." But as you grow, this thing should be taken out and it should be for the sake of progress and learning how to play. That's within
Yeah,
them.
actually, I have a question over here. Like, say, for example, if you're, let's, because we're talking about games, should one play in order to win, etc. So if you have a series of games and say, like, she went to the better players to, practice. If a poor player comes up to you and says, I want to practice, it does nothing for you, because you know that you're going to win anyway. So, I mean, should you or should you not? Because this whole thing is about what you should do for yourself. So, because that's not, you know, as she says, it's not a good thing. You shouldn't play with people who are so much weaker than you because you're going to win. What's the point of that? But when somebody comes to you and says, "But I want to play," you know that you're going to beat them. Then should you not?
I think it depends on person to person. Huh? I mean, she was lucky they ended playing with her, and it that never play with, anybody who's less. Like the mother used to play tennis every evening, Yaksha, and various sadhaks who had, and there her purpose was different. Her purpose was she used it as a give them some spiritual
Music less?
the transmission happening.
I can't hear you.
Your
Voice is gone.
your voice is swibbly.
I think that was a different purpose. It was like a spiritual transmission from the mother to the son. That's what was happening. There, whether one was a good player or bad player was immaterial. So same way, whether if suppose I am a very good player and somebody comes and says I want to play with you, at that time, whether I say yes or no totally depends on me. I mean, there are times when I say okay, fine, doesn't matter because it's okay, person will learn something. Let me do it. Some other times when I'm myself wanting to learn, I may not. So I don't think there is a set formula for it, but she's just giving you the principle that always the motivation should be progress to do better, not better than somebody else, but for yourself to compete with yourself. What you were today, tomorrow you will be better.
I think this is a brilliant principle because, we apply it a lot. I mean, when you're cycling, playing Scrabble, whatever, in any kind of sport, it's usually against yourself, right? But there are a lot of people who think that you should play for others. You know, you should do things for other people and not for yourself. So there's always that conflict, I find.
Yeah. So because you are in competitions now, where the whole purpose is to win.
But even then, they expect you to play with people who you will definitely win, and they expect you to be okay with that. So I don't know how that makes any sense. But anyway, that's just, I'll
Yes,
explain to you later separately. It's just
this
a
is
weird part.
what she's saying, and if you see what she herself used to do at the ashram, sports were given a lot of importance till date. Today, everybody, no matter what their age, has to do physical activity. Uh, and they have this annual sports day where physical demonstrations and all happen in December. But mother herself used to hold uh, like if there were athletics, she herself used to hold the finishing line tape, and there were competitions, and till date there are for all ages, swimming competitions, gymnastics competitions, everything. But the attitude she's saying, so she's not saying don't have competitions, do, but the attitude she's saying is to progress rather than to beat the other. When you are very young and your consciousness is at that level, then that is the motivation that pulls you out of, that activates your energy, because the concept of just doing it for the sake of progress, etc., is not there. But gradually that should become the primary thing, and then you give your best in the competition. If you win, you win. You don't win, you're not depressed, or this thing, you have given your best.
Actually, that's the reason why. That's the reason why if you're invested in your progress, then it doesn't matter whether you won or lost. What matters is that you have learned. So then what happens is because your mind is calmer, you can then do better the next time around. And you can really absorb what has happened, even if it's a defeat, you can absorb what's happened better.
It's the same principle of nishkam karma, basically. At its essence, it's the same principle.
For this last line, I never won, but I learned much, is a very good thing that I have used to teach children, because even children, as when they are young, of course they always want to be first and whatever, and then as they start growing, um, every child goes through that phase where they feel upset about not winning. So I would always tell the children in such a way that, oh, but we took an idea from that person, the other one, that, so you can't just tell them that this is for your progress or this is what you're learning. So I would tell them in such a way that we took an idea about how that person won and we didn't win or whatever. So it just kind of helps with children also.
Yeah, it has to start at when they are children so that it becomes an attitude. Not very young, maybe, but gradual. And even when you do, even with young children, when you do things where you keep records, uh, like when they are jumping, how the distance they jump, and you keep marking it, and they every day see that yesterday I could jump till this line, today I can do till this line. So they become interested in their own progress, and the focus is that rather than what the other child is, how far they're jumping. At times it can become a motivation to put in more effort. The other My friend can jump so far, let me also try. you know and that is one of the things which, interestingly, this the Gargi girls, na Ila, who came for observation, their observation round is complete, and tomorrow the first slot will come back to do an activity with the children. So one of the things which was common in their observations, when they observed the children, especially in the playground, was that they were really surprised how the children were so helpful with each other. And if somebody was wanting to go first in the line, even though they were behind, they simply gave them their space. Or if somebody was not able to complete something, they cheered and they helped, and all that kind of a thing. You know, so this is something happening naturally at Lavani because of so many other things which are happening. The teachers may not be focusing on this specially, but this is an observation which they made, and so it stands out. It's interesting to read their observations because I was sharing with Prerna also today that a lot of things which we take for granted, when they have noted these, then it says, oh, okay, right, yeah, we could do this, okay. But acha, it doesn't happen like that. We didn't know this. So it's interesting.
Yeah, even what you mentioned about marking their jumpings, I remember we used to do this. And even when they used to come to the yoga hall, we would hold a rope, the jump rope, and they would all be more excited. And this cheering thing, yeah, there are certain things which stand out, of course, with Lavani.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that even though it is not just that, आपने बच्चों को बता दिया कि ऐसे करना चाहिए, but because the whole atmosphere is
And yeah,
that they
you
can,
create it every day. You
uh, that thing of that I have to prove myself by winning, that need is not there, that I'll be accepted only if I'm the best, or I will get praise only if I do it better than somebody else. So that which builds up such insecurity, which parents unconsciously start and teachers add on to it so much. When that is missing, then you see these kind of things. The noble side of the nature comes out more natural. Okay, so let's end here. We meet next Monday.